Well, welcome everybody to our final panel workshop of the new Green Economy Compass Conference. I'm Dan Dranko from the primary sponsor organization, Tennessee Alliance for Progress. We have a couple of other main sponsoring organizations, the Nashville Peace and Justice Center and the Wendland Cook Program in Religion, Labor, and Ecology, plus around 20 or so community-based organizations that are serving as co-sponsors and participants in this conference. We've had a very engaging week of presentations. I know I've learned a lot, and people have commented that they've learned a lot from this conference. And we're going to be using it as a springboard to further organizing and development in the greater Tennessee Valley region. So we're not just watchers, we're going to be workers in the process. And so I'm going to turn it over to Alex Easdale from the Southern Climate Energy Network, Southeast Climate and Energy Network, and he will be facilitating today's session. So thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you, Daniel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Daniel. Amazing job this week. I participated in as many as I could, and just a fabulous job. You know, wish you could have one of these every week, to be honest with you, but that's a joke, and but good job. Really happy to be part of this. I am Alexander Isdell. I'm the Executive Director of the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. We're a network of now 64 organizations spread throughout the Southeast, and we envision the Southeastern U.S. as a leading region for just, equitable, and inclusive solutions to the climate crisis. So I'm super excited to present this panel and these panelists who I just met and already feel like we're friends. So first I'm going to introduce Benny Overton, who is the co-director of the Southeast Center for Cooperative Development. He recently retired as president of the United Auto Workers Local 737 in Nashville, Tennessee. His other roles have included vice president of National Organizing for Action and Hope, president of the Dixon County branch NAACP, an officer of the Tennessee AFL-CIO, executive board member of the Nashville area Middle Tennessee Central Labor Council, and adjunct professor at the Tennessee State University College of Business. Benny holds an MBA from Tennessee State University. Benny has also been involved in workers' rights and economic equity issues for many years. This includes experience planning and leading experimental worker committees in the manufacturing industry. In these committees, workers made decisions democratically on all things related to production. So really appreciate you, Benny, and your amazing career and leadership that I'm just reading here from your bio. And I am also very happy to present Rosemary Henkel Rieger, who is a community labor organizer, author, and lecturer. After working in the biotech industry as a researcher and teaching Montessori for many years, Rosemary has organized student and community groups as well as people of faith and union members to support worker rights issues. Rosemary is a co-founder and co-director of the Southeast Center for Cooperative Development, which is educating the public about building community wealth and creating good jobs through worker-owned enterprises. So again, this panel is the worker cooperative development in the new green economy. Definitely last, but definitely not least in this amazing conference. So Benny and Rosemary, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. And thank the host for giving us an opportunity to spread the word about the worker co-op. So share with you some information about what we could do and how we would fit in. In examining the role which worker co-ops could play in the new green economy, we chose to look at the primary jobs which would be created with implementation of the Thrive agenda. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. Thrive, that's the transform, heal, and renew by investing in a vibrant economy. That was something proposed by some progressive congressional Democrats, and apparently has been adopted by the current administration. We're looking at the jobs that agenda would create. We feel that worker cooperatives align well with the initiative to sustain Earth and to build a better economy. So we'll start by first briefly discussing worker cooperatives, just what they are, what makes them unique, why they are important in the challenge we have ahead. So I'll start presentation. Okay. Again, we're with the Southeast Center for Cooperative Development. So what is a co-op? According to the International Cooperative Alliance, cooperatives are people and community-centered. They're for-profit enterprises that are owned and democratically controlled by the members. They are formed to meet the unfulfilled needs of members in the communities. So cooperatives bring people together in a democratic and egalitarian way. There are several types of cooperatives, but today our focus is on workers' cooperatives. And cooperatives are democratically managed, one member, one vote. Two words that I guess are central to the heart of what a co-op is are democracy and equality. So what is a co-op in a nutshell? Co-op is democratically owned because people who work at the co-op are the people who own it. And it's owned equally by each person. Cooperatives are democratically controlled. Members have an equal say over the co-op operations. All the members have a voice, and the voices are equal. And cooperatives or co-ops are democratically benefiting, meaning that it's equitable and just in its provisions of benefits to the co-op members and to their communities.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I wanted to say thank you for inviting us to be here. Thanks to everyone who is on this webinar. And I'd like to talk about the co-op principles. So like Benny just mentioned, right, co-ops are for-profit businesses that are owned and controlled by their members. And in the work that we do, we mainly focus on worker cooperatives, so cooperatives that are owned and controlled by the employees or by the workers. And cooperatives are values-driven businesses that put the worker and the community's benefit at the core of their purpose. And they are based on 7 principles and 10 values, and you can read along with me. The co-op identity that we have today is actually derived from a set of principles that were developed by the Rochdale Equitable Society of Pioneers in 1844. This was a group of weavers in England who pooled their resources and started a store in order to offer good food at honest prices. And the Equitable Society of Pioneers weren't the only group that have been working cooperatively throughout history. There are many others, but it just so happened that their history was not lost or forgotten or repressed as the history of many other communities, particularly African-American communities who have been working, and indigenous communities also. And these communities have been working for, centuries cooperatively. And I just wanted to give a little shout out to Jessica Gordon Nembhard and her book, Collective Courage. It's the history of African-American cooperative economic thought and practice. So if you're interested in that, check out Collective Courage. So the 7 principles, starting with principle 1, it's voluntary and open membership. That means that cooperatives are voluntary organizations. They're open to all persons, who are willing to accept the responsibilities of the membership. And that is without gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. The second principle is democratic member control, and that means that cooperatives are democratic organizations controlled by their members, and these members actively participate in setting the policies and making decisions that affect the co-op. And this is all based on one member, one vote, so all members have equal voting rights. Member economic participation means that the members contribute equally, equitably to and democratically control the capital of their cooperative. And at least part of the capital is usually kept as common property in the cooperative. And the members, this is what's unique, especially for worker cooperatives, it's the members who decide what is done with the surplus, with the profits for any, and decide what they're used for. So unlike traditional businesses, this is really important that the workers in a worker co-op decide what is done with the profits. In the next slide, we have the fourth principle, autonomy and independence. And that means that co-ops are autonomous self-help organizations controlled by their members. And that means that if cooperatives enter into any agreements with other organizations or groups, or if they raise capital from other sources, that they do so on terms that always ensure democratic control by the members and maintain their autonomy. So outside investors never have the controlling interests. Education, training, and information is vital for cooperatives, and co-ops make sure that the members are educated and get training, that elected representatives, managers, employees, right, all get training so that they can contribute effectively to the development and management of their cooperative. They also inform the general public, particularly young people, about the benefits and around the co-op model. The sixth principle is cooperation among cooperatives. And cooperatives serve their members most effectively and strengthen the cooperative movement by working together through local, national, regional, and international structures. So the co-op movement is an international movement. You'll find cooperatives across the world in almost every country. And cooperatives, of course, try and support each other as much as possible. The last principle is concern for community. And so cooperatives work for sustainable development of their communities through policies approved by their members. So that's really important, and that's what co-ops are built on. And these 7 principles are based on the following values, and I'll just list them. And a lot of them, are pretty self-explanatory. So it's self-help, self-responsibility, of course, democracy, equality, equity, solidarity, honesty, and social responsibility, as well as caring for others.
Now, briefly, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the key differences between co-ops and conventional companies. And these differences aren't absolute, they're just relative differences between the two. One is the participation, which leads to involvement. So when cooperative self-control is much more prevalent as a result of the participation and involvement. There's a greater sense of commitment when someone is typically involved in laying out a course of action or action plan, they typically tend to be more committed to seeing that the plan works. While in conventional companies, there's a greater emphasis is placed on external control to ensure compliance. Co-ops seek the involvement of the whole person with the mind and ingenuity engaged. Another difference, co-op workers fill various roles, but there's less of a sense of title or a reliance on positional authority, as the most effective power within a cooperative structure is personal power. This is more like the reverent power or expert power, which is the ability to influence others because you are respected or admired, or the ability to influence others because of the expertise that you may have in a particular subject or field of action. Whereas with the more conventional companies, the power tends to rely on authority and formal position. And this is legitimate power, but it's a position of power over subordinates. Cooperatives tend not to have subordinates, as equality, again, that's one of the key terms. Equality is very important. So there's a greater sense of equality. Co-ops are balanced by their values and principles. So they have a greater sense of value and a balance in the way they value and their concern for people, profits, and planet. Whereas the conventional companies typically have as their primary focus profits. And the primacy of profits as a requirement, because for most companies, it's part of their fiduciary responsibility is to maximize profits. But that primacy is largely the reason we have the economy that we have today that produces income and wealth inequality, and that help create the climate crisis that we're facing now because of this primacy of profits. In the co-op, the communication emphasis is primarily horizontal. It's for the purpose of collaboration, communication, cooperation, and information sharing. Whereas in the more conventional structure, communication emphasis is vertical, where you have reports and requests that flows up from subordinates, and you have commands and directives that flow down from managers. The work of co-op is generally formed to address unfulfilled needs of workers. And these needs have a wide range, the economic, physiological, psychological, along with the members' concern for communities and responsibilities for the planet. While the more conventional companies tend to be primarily concerned with meeting the workers' basic economic needs. And given the common incidence of low-wage employment, this is often inadequate.
Here we wanted to share with you some benefits of shared ownership. And I know it's kind of small, so sorry that you can't see it any better, but that top graph shows that it's a study from 2012, and it shows that for every $1,000 spent at a local food co-op, $1,604 go back into the local economy, and that's $239 more than if $1,000 were spent at a local conventional grocery store. And more dollars stay local because co-ops tend to source locally, hire locally, and invest their surplus or profit locally. Another benefit, as you can see in the graph just under that, is higher wages. And a study of income in a house cleaning worker cooperative showed that after workers became members, their median income jumped from $24,000 to $40,000. That was a 40% increase. The graph on the right shows that in this study that after 5 years, 62% of the co-op startups were still in business, compared to 35% of conventional businesses. So they are more resilient and are longer lived, and especially in the startup phase. For worker co-ops, some of the benefits include control over the way work is organized, and Benny talked about some of this before, right? So since workers own and control, right, the workplace, they have a say in how the work is organized, performed, and managed. Worker co-ops bring employment security because employment is superior to capital, right? Capital is subordinate to creating jobs in worker co-ops. There's a financial and ownership stake in the business, right? The workers decide what is done with the surplus and the profits they create. There's an opportunity to practice democracy in the workplace. And like, as we pointed out with the food co-op, there's increased local spending because co-ops hire locally, right? They usually stay in the community and not wander off once the tax breaks run out. So those are just some of the benefits of shared ownership.
Next, we'll look at some of the green job opportunities that's open to the co-op. And let me add that worker co-ops, any business that's out here could be structured as a worker cooperative by, I guess, sincerely adopting the principles and values, the core values of the co-op, and by developing a culture of involvement, learning, and ownership, which are key to the cooperative performance. The business could be a cooperative. But we want to look at some of the opportunities. And this, again, is based on the response prescribed by the Thrive Agenda, which recognizes the need for a comprehensive approach to the interlocking crisis we're currently facing. You know, it reminds me of the analogy some guy once mentioned about the problem being a huge balloon that we've got to deflate. And you can't very well do it by focusing on one point or putting pressure at one point, because then it will just expand in other areas. It requires a comprehensive approach in order to totally surround the problem and start to be effective in addressing it. So this Thrive Agenda is just such an approach, comprehensive, bold agenda. The projected number of jobs created by the comprehensive agenda is about 15.9 million a year. This for each of a 10-year program. This is based on the Perry report, University of Mass, Amherst. Nearly 10% of those jobs will be manufacturing. These critical investments in the green economy are necessary if we are to arrest the imminent and irreversible ecological damage that's being done, if we're to transform, heal, and renew the society. Now, some of the key sectors that would be affected are infrastructure, clean energy, agriculture and land restoration, and the care economy. So let's look at some of the opportunity in each of these structures. Here in infrastructure cooperatives. Now, many building trade jobs will result from a new green economy. As the country moves to improve its crumbling infrastructure, I think today is currently rated at a D+. They want to move that to a B rating, the infrastructure. So work ranges from surface transportation, replacing pipes for water, particularly replacing the older lead pipes, pipes for gas, dams, waterways, parks, waste, broadband, airports, schools, rail, and levee. These job opportunities are largely building trades, construction jobs. And cooperatives are not generally what comes to mind when considering construction work. But interestingly, there's a history of worker cooperatives and building trades. About 100 years ago in the Boston area, there was the Building Trades Construction and Housing Council. And this was a union cooperative that John Nason formed in late 1920. It provided for quality development at lower costs, and they were building basically houses. And they found that by working together, the various building trades could coordinate the work among themselves. And again, coordination is one of the principles of cooperatives. And by doing so, eliminate subcontractors while the council acted as a general contractor. This was and is a very promising concept, and it's worth revisiting today. The enterprise that Nason formed eventually failed, but it failed due to inadequate financing. And this was the period of the 20s when the economy turned sour, basically. But it shows that the concept is not completely alien to construction work and that there's merit to it. Today, one version of the building trades as worker co-ops is the Renewed Development Cooperative. It operates as a hybrid, where it's both a worker cooperative and a producer cooperative. In the Renewed Development Cooperative, a small group of local trade companies have joined together to take on construction projects. They have 9 individual shareholders representing 7 different companies that do general contracting, framing, electrical work, cabinetry, flooring, and windows. They found that they can work together, pay themselves more while charging less. So this serves as an example that what is possible for various construction opportunities in the infrastructure sector.
Yeah, next, broadband. Some people have been pointing out in the chat some of the challenges of utility cooperatives, that members aren't as involved, and so a lot of the decisions made, right, aren't necessarily the best for the community. And I just wanted to point out there are movements to change that, but it's real. So thank you for pointing that out. But one, you know, like with broadband and infrastructure, it is an important, co-ops are important here and are adding value, because just as many rural areas were electrified through cooperative efforts in the 1930s, the same strategy proves to be successful for bringing high-speed internet to many of these same areas in the past decade. The costs are too high for most telephone companies, as their mission is often solely based on maximizing profit. Investing in communities for benefit of the folks who live there is not in the conventional utility company's interest. However, cooperatives are developed, as we mentioned, for the benefit of the people who own and control them, for their members. And recently, the National Rural Electric Cooperatives Association CEO Jim Matheson told an energy industry forum recently that co-ops are about constructive, positive ideas to help communities that they serve. Broadband has got to be part of the infrastructure package, he said. We stand ready to ensure that rural America has access to broadband service that the rest of the country has too. So it's really important, right, that we ensure equity in access, and to get to these remote places, right, rural places where other companies don't want to invest. The cooperative model has shown to be the way to create this access. And Various infrastructure projects will also require engineering and or consulting services, especially at the design stages. And worker cooperatives for these professional services, as well as engineering services for the industrial components of these projects, are also available. I think Benny already pointed out, right? You can find worker cooperatives in any sector. And here we'd like to point out Isthmus Engineering. It's an industrial engineering worker cooperative, and it does manufacturing also. Robotics and automation, equipment design and manufacture are their specialties. They're located in Madison, Wisconsin, and they've been around for 20 years. So this is just an example of engineering and consulting cooperatives.
Another sector that would be included in the Thrive agenda is clean energy. This includes energy efficiency, retrofits, industrial efficiency, high efficiency autos, renewables, and the renewable energy, wind, solar, and geothermal. Look at some examples here. One that we find is Namaste Solar. This is an employee-owned solar electric company. And let me point out that some of the other utilities that you looked at are actually consumer cooperatives. Here we're talking about worker cooperatives, and there is some difference. There's some difference. But Namaste Solar is an employee-owned solar electric company. Besides being an employee-owned cooperative, they're also a B Corp. Now, B Corp means that they've received certification for their standards in social sustainability and environmental performance. Similar to some of the co-op principles, but I guess with this, we have the certification. They offer residential and commercial solar sales and installation. They also offer a range of solar service offerings, including consulting, engineering, design, operations, and maintenance. This company was founded in 2005 in Boulder, Colorado, and Namaste Solar has installed over 8,100 solar panels with the solar electric systems, totaling over 103 megawatts of generating capacity. Another worker co-op in the clean energy field is Sustainogy. Our friends in Cincinnati has formed this Cincinnati-based worker-owned cooperative, specializing in energy efficiency solutions from insulation in attics, walls, basements, crawl space, as well as a more holistic solar installation. They perform energy-free assessments and design insulation and efficiency upgrades with the fastest return on investment.
Agriculture and land restoration, that's another sector that the Thrive agenda looks at. And this sector includes regenerative agriculture, farming practices that rebuild organic matter of soil and restore its biodiversity, farmland conservation, land restoration, pollution cleanup, and ecosystem restoration. And here we have some examples that fit into this sector. And one example that we wanted to highlight is Nashville Foodscapes. Though not farming in the usual sense, this local worker cooperative exists to inspire people to imagine their yards as dynamic ecosystems that can nourish our communities. Their services include consultation, design, installation, maintenance of edible landscapes for residential or commercial properties. And we're excited about Nashville Foodscapes because it's the first conversion of a traditional or conventional business to a worker cooperative in Tennessee. And so we're really excited to have worked with them and to see them grow here in Nashville. In the next slide, we have Dig Cooperative, and this is an Oakland, California worker cooperative that specializes in water conservation and water efficiency retrofits, rainwater catchment systems, gray water irrigation systems, stormwater management, and green building. And their mission is to assist people in water stewardship principles using practical solutions. So again, you know, there are worker co-ops in all different sectors.
Next sector we want to look at is the care economy. And this deals with the community's need for health and mental health resources, child care, elder care, care for individuals with disabilities, and hospitals. Worker co-ops opportunities include worker-owned child care services, home nursing services, and other affiliated services. One example we have here is the Cooperative Home Care Associates, CHCA. Located in the Bronx, New York, this home health care cooperative started in 1985 with 12 providers. Today, it is the largest worker cooperative in the US with over 2,000 workers. Consistent with the cooperative principle of cooperation among cooperatives, CACA has agreed to pilot the services of another newly formed co-op, that's the Drivers Co-op. Now, the Drivers Co-op have developed their own ride-hailing app, which gives them the opportunity to position themselves opposite Uber and Lyft. They feel that Uber and Lyft are exploited, particularly with their drivers. And so they developed this alternative. CACA has agreed to partner with them. The Drivers Co-op will provide transport for the home health care workers. And of course, the Drivers Cooperative have plans to transition to all electric vehicles when practical. Given the purpose, principles, and values which guide their behavior and aims, we feel that cooperatives, and particularly worker cooperatives, are ideal as a form of business organization committed to a just and sustainable economy, in which accommodates the interconnectedness of our coexistence with each other and with the planet.
And here we'd like to tell you a bit about another project that we've started. And this we've done in order to support the development of worker co-ops in Tennessee. We founded a cooperative loan fund with our partners Free Hearts. And Free Hearts is a local group advocating for and supporting formerly incarcerated individuals and their families. And this fund is called the New Economy of Tennessee, or NET Fund. It's a part of a national community wealth cooperative called Seed Commons. And Seed Commons makes capital available to those marginalized in entrepreneurship and the economy. Startups often have difficulty gaining access to capital, and that's even more so for startup worker co-ops. Banks and lenders often do not understand the co-op model. They want personal guarantees, collateral, credit scores, you know, above 700 and the like. So this loan fund has created dedicated funding for worker co-ops whose members are women, people of color, undocumented, formerly incarcerated, low income, and youth. And in the next slide, we'll talk about some of the special characteristics of this loan fund. it's a non-extractive loan fund, which means that a borrower will never be worse off than before working with the loan fund. The repayments are no repayments are greater than the profits that the co-op makes. There are no personal guarantees, no credit scores. We rigorously assess business plans and give technical assistance in order to help startups succeed. So we build long-term business relationships, and you know, the repayment of the loans helps that the loan fund is replenished, and so it can, you know, constantly revolve, so we can help other co-ops start up. And we know all small businesses have suffered tremendously during the pandemic. Many businesses have had to close their doors for good. As 41% of Black-owned businesses have been shuttered, we see that minority business owners are disproportionately affected by the economic downturn. And so knowing this, we have started an emergency loan fund for small businesses. We collected $15,000 in seed funding from foundations, and we're able to give out 6 $2,500 grants to minority small-owned businesses, which have been negatively impacted by COVID and the March 5th tornado that tore through North Nashville and other communities. And so we just wanted to highlight some of this work because it is important that worker cooperatives and small businesses, right, our local businesses stay in business, that we can keep jobs here locally. And so that is just some of the other work we've been doing at the Southeast Center.
And before we start questions, we wanted to remind you that, or wanted to announce that we are having classes. Here's some contact information for us. You can visit our website at coopsnow.org. That's co-opsnow.org. And of course at our Facebook page, Organizing the New Economy. We have what we call a Co-op Academy. It's 10 weeks of courses, of classes beginning February 22nd. That's one night a week from 6 to 8, and it's free. We are trying to educate people about worker co-ops and the possibility, potential there. And we invite you all to partake if you're interested. So at this point, I guess we open it up for questions.
Yeah, there are a few already in the chat I see here. One is, why aren't there more worker cooperatives in Tennessee? Good question. Yeah, if you look at a map, you'll see that there are kind of hot spots of worker cooperatives on the West Coast, you know, a lot around the LA area, San Francisco, Seattle, and then on the East Coast in the Northeast, you know, Boston, of course, is a hot spot, New York City. But in the South, yeah, not as many worker cooperatives. It's even though, like Dr. Gordon Emhart points out in her history of cooperatives, like there is a long history, and in the South, right, especially among African-American communities, but that has been lost and suppressed. So some of the reasons are, you know, it's not a well-known model. Like we said, you know, that's why the loan fund and the emergency funding, right, that it's very hard for worker co-ops to get funding through financial support through lenders and banks. There are more and more popping up that do lend to worker cooperatives, but not as many as we need. So financial support is a big one. Another one is statutes for a cooperative entity. They're laws that govern utility cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, producer cooperatives in Tennessee, but not worker cooperatives. So, starting that up, we need to use other models for that. There's not a whole lot or no funding right now in Tennessee from the government or other entities for worker co-op startups. Other cities like Boston, New York City invest millions of dollars every year for worker co-op startups. So that's another difference. Benny, do you?
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to do was to just make people more aware of the cooperative option, because for the most part, people just weren't aware of it. And we want to particularly make the people in government, local government, who could support the development, make them aware of it as well, and to create some demand, some pull demand for the development of cooperative. We realized that one of the greatest barriers was money and getting money to invest, because people have ideas for businesses and have a desire to operate businesses, but lack the financing. That's one of the reasons that we were just excited about starting the net fund, the loan fund that we could create that is totally non-extractive, so that, because we know that particularly the audience that we wanted to put a particular focus on was those who were marginalized anyway, because we're trying to address the inequality problems. And we know that our audience, or our primary target, are those who don't have the collateral, who don't have the savings, who don't have the credit scores. So with C Commons, we have access to a non-extractive loan fund that doesn't require all of that. What we want to do is make sure they succeed, which is why we have the Co-op Academy, so that we can start preparing them for starting a business. And in addition to the academy, we'll have an accelerator where we will really begin to focus in on what it takes to make it all successful. But yeah, that's some of the challenges that we are eager to address. Getting them started, getting the word out, making people aware, and providing the funding.
Yeah, there was another question about co-ops for truck driving, and a lot of drivers have to purchase their own trucks. That's interesting that you asked that question, Martha, because we're actually working with a group right now that would like to start a trucking transportation cooperative. There aren't a whole lot of worker-owned truck driving cooperatives that we're aware of. There are two others, I believe, one in Maryland, and I forgot where the other one is. I think in Boston, but there aren't a whole lot.
One of the things we want to encourage and make people aware of, there's also the opportunity to convert. You know, there's many people who have businesses, the baby boom generation who own businesses, that are looking for retirement and don't have succession plans. A large percentage of businesses, small businesses, when the owner is ready to retire, he doesn't have anyone to succeed him, and it's difficult selling the business for the most part. I think about 80% go unsold. Another option is to convert to employee ownership. So you have employees, that the employees buy it. And we'd be more than willing to help and assist with that as well. I think there's an enormous opportunity for that, because it brings more stability to the jobs that's there, and to the economics of the communities. When you have these small businesses that really employ a lot of people, give them that opportunity, that avenue to be more stable.
Yeah, I see folks asking about in music industry, video production co-ops, and I put my my email in the chat, and so there are I could send you links. So if you email me with your question, I can send you links of some examples. I don't, yeah, I don't know the name of some. I know they're out there, but so yeah, if you email that, that would be great. Is there any kind of intersection between worker co-ops and unions? Good question, and I'll throw that one to Benny.
In my background is labor. I was with the union, of course, the AFL-CIO, the Central Labor Council, and it's in a budding stage. But there's a close relationship between what was happening in Cincinnati and our friends there at Co-op Cincy and the United Steelworkers. As a matter of fact, one of the largest cooperative networks in the world is the Madrigal co-op in Spain. And they had a very close relationship with the United Steelworkers, who were eager to bring some of the concepts and give a boost to the development of worker co-ops here in this country. And they were instrumental in helping the folks in Cincinnati launch some of their cooperative initiatives. So it's budding. And of course, at our first conference we had in 2015, which Dan assisted us in hosting, the vice president of the AFL-CIO was one of our keynote speakers. So the unions have interest. I think it's this budding interest, and I'm sure maybe Bonda's here. She's president of the Central Labor Council. And we know that for some, they see it as potential competition, but it's not. It's just a matter of educating and showing how it can be a benefit to us all. And basically, it's about workers' rights. And that's probably one of the things that got me interested and involved in it initially. Because I see it as a way, a method by which you can give workers a voice and greater involvement in the job. Allow the whole person to be employed, rather than have a worker feel like an automaton, because I come from an industrial background and that was often fulfilling. So I think it's an elevation or another path to securing workers' rights. I mean, when you own the company, then it doesn't get much better.
Yes, our friends in Cincinnati at Co-op Cincy, they're a cooperative development center in Cincinnati. They work very closely with the unions there. They have a food hub and a farm. Someone mentioned small farmers using the co-op model, and in Cincinnati there's a worker-owned farm and food hub, and the workers there have a bargaining contract under the United Food and Commercial Workers. And the co-op Sustainergy that Benny talked about in the presentation, they're also in Cincinnati, and they are also the worker owners are also, I believe, members of the United Steelworkers. So there are examples out there. I know of I think it's a paper mill, I believe in Wisconsin right now, that the workers are actually trying to buy out from the owners. It's the owners are a company, I believe, in Japan, and they want to sell this paper mill, but the community wants to save the job. It's like 600 jobs that might be lost. And so so the union there, they were union jobs at the mill, and so the union is working with the workers to see if they can buy out this mill and preserve the jobs and run it as a worker co-op. So there are examples.
Hey, Rosemary and Benny.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing. I mean, I've never had such an easy job of moderating. You know, you kind of check the chat yourselves, you answer the questions. You know, should have had a cup of coffee or something here. So I am fascinated by this presentation. I love the examples. I'm going to ask one quick question, and I want us to end on time. But before anything, sign me up to the your Co-op Academy. I'm going to be a student, and we have a very wide listserv. We're going to share this information. So if you have a blurb on it, please share with me because I'm super interested. And Benny, I love the way you talked about the cooperative option, right? I've started a few small companies, and this was never an option for me. As I was drawing it out, I never thought about it. And I'm philosophically aligned with all of the principles you're talking about. Yet, you know, I was sold something else. I was told that a business is supposed to be for profit, right? And then maybe do a little philanthropy, you know, selectively, but what have you. So this is a wonderful model. And my favorite example was the Cooperative Home Care Associates, where they partnered with a driver co-op who drove folks, and then they're transitioning to electric vehicles. So it kind of becomes a circular thing that's really awesome, right? It's good for the economy, good for the environment, so on and so forth. My good friend Brianna pointed out, and I'll ask you to answer this question quickly, and then we can just end at 8 o'clock. But the rural electric co-ops, not only in Tennessee but throughout, there's been issues with, and you mentioned NRECA and Jim Matheson. There's been issues with transparency and democratic governance that varies among electric co-ops, and they are working on it, to my knowledge, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. But can you talk a little bit about the case of Tennessee? And I read somebody put, I think William put that they're not required to follow the 7 principles of cooperative. So I'll ask you to answer that question, and then we can just wrap it up. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting question. We're not that familiar with the consumer co-op world. We work very closely with the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives and other worker co-op development centers across the U.S. So unfortunately, I can't say that much about it. We do realize it is a problem, and it's not something to gloss over. And I should have looked it up, but I will look up. There is a group who is actively trying to work with member owners of electric utility cooperatives to go back to the principles and to kind of reclaim their power as owners, as member owners in electric cooperatives, and then to have influence, right, about how is electricity generated, right? Should we invest in solar arrays, or how, what should we do? So I know there's a movement, but unfortunately, I don't know more than that.
No, that's great, Rosemary. And it's just those of us that work in the energy space. Sorry?
You go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Benny. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the terms of the ownership should be in the bylaws, and it's up to the members to hold the board accountable. And if they're not following the bylaws, then you need to raise hell.
Yeah, we're going to bring the two of you into one of our calls with Sen and also the Advancing Equity and Opportunity Collaborative, because I think there's some synergy there, and maybe we can solve a few problems in the process. Y'all, Daniel, Benny, Rosemary, this was awesome. I love this presentation. 3 pages full of notes. We will follow up. Please sign up to the Co-op Academy. I know I will, and I'm going to ask some of my colleagues to do as well. And yeah, we're going to wrap it up. Have a wonderful night. Really love this presentation. So thank you so much. And yeah, take care.
All right. Thank you. Guys,
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.